Today we will be discussing Shelley's To a Skylark, a very familiar poem, and you know that it was published in 1820 with his another significant work, Prometheus Unbound. And we all know that this poem was actually inspired by a real incident. It was actually inspired by Shelley's summer evening walk through a countryside in Italy, and Mary Shelley, his wife, was also with him. Uh, and this poem describes a bird that is Skylark, the bird that he actually saw at that time. So this poem is had a kind of a uh, uh, real background. Anyway, uh, and we also know that this poem is composed with a very unique kind of rhyme pattern, highly melodious and musical uh, kind of pattern, metrical pattern that the poem actually was composed in. And this poem has 21 stanzas, and each stanza consists of 5 lines. So each stanza consists of 5 lines. The first 4 lines are in trochaic trimeter, and the fifth line is iambic hexameter. So we know that this particular type of metrical pattern is called Alexandrine. The fifth line, that is in iambic hexameter, which is called Alexandrine, and the rhyme scheme of the poem is AB ABB. So now we will come to the central idea of the poem. Uh, so we know that as the title the title tells us that the focus of our attention in this poem is the bird, Skylar. So, what is the basic characteristic of this bird, which is emphasized in the poem? So, that we should uh, always keep in mind. The salient feature or the nature of the bird that strikes the imagination of the poet. So, what is the most important thing? What is the most significant feature about this bird that actually attracts the attention of the poet? So, why is this particular bird, the Skylark, is so important for the poet? Why he has chosen this particular bird as uh, um, uh, the main metaphor uh, to represent his ideas. So why is this bird particularly? Uh, so we know that Skylark, it flies very high. So this is one of the significant features of this bird, that it flies very high. And at the same time, while it flies at very height, it also sings. So while it flies high, it sings. So this is another significant feature of this bird. So one thing is that it flies high, and another thing is that it also sings when it flies high. And the third feature of this bird that attracts the attention of the poet is that uh, while it flies, or it flies so high that it cannot be seen. So it cannot be seen. So it flies so high that it cannot be seen. So this is the third significant feature of this bird. And another significant feature of this bird is that though it cannot be seen, but still it could be heard. It could be heard. So this is another significant feature of this bird that strikes the imagination of the poet. So this bird, this particular bird, can fly very high. It also sings when it is in flight. It We cannot see it because it flies so high. It remains so distant. But at the same time, uh, it can be heard that anyone can hear the music of this bird, though they they cannot see it. So this is the most significant feature of this bird, that even if it is invisible, one can hear it, one can listen to its music. So this is the most significant feature of this bird, or the uh, condition of this bird, that is most important for Shelley. So now, why this particular feature of this bird strikes the imagination of the poet? We all know that Shelley is an idealistic poet. So Shelley's idealism, it is very well known. We know that he was revolutionary, and at the same time he was very much idealistic. He had a kind of uncompromising idealism, uncompromising idealism. So he always lived with the, a kind of idealism, a kind of dream-like idealism, a kind of visionary idealism. So he was the uh, he was the one romantic poet among the group of all romantic poets who had the most uh, who had this idea or idealism, this particular way of looking at uh, things, that was the most significantly uh, present in his ideas, or his poetic thoughts. So this was the dominant feature in Shelley's poetic ideas or poetic self. So this is the very nature that characterizes Shelley. So Shelley's idealism, and at the same time, this particular condition of the bird. So this is actually these two things gets matched in this poem. So now we can understand why is this bird so important for Shelley? Because Shelley was an idealistic poet, and here he uh, uh, tries to understand this bird according to his own poetic ideas. That is, this bird is in this poem represented as a metaphor for the world of idealism. So this bird represents what we understand as the ideal, that is the abstract thing that cannot be captured, that can only be imagined. So that world of idealism that is represented by the bird, and at the same time, uh, uh, the world of idealism is juxtaposed with the ordinary world that where human or men live. So this world of reality, or this mundane world, is contrasted with the world of the bird, that is the world of idealism, that is represented by this bird. So this bird, as it flies high, it flies above the earth, above the earth. That means it flies beyond mortal experience. It flies beyond mortal experience. So, as it is far removed from the experiences of the mundane world, this bird is seen by the poet as something that truly represents the world of idealism that can only be imagined, that can only be conceived by our heart, but it cannot be represented through any concrete form because it is completely ideal. So, this bird in this poem is a metaphor, is a symbol of the world of idealism. It is also represented as a joyous spirit. It is full of joy because it represents that world of joy which is completely free from our mundane experience. So it's the value of this bird or the worth of this bird cannot be understood by our ordinary ordinary methods or ordinary way of judging the value of things or by our mundane empirical knowledge. So it cannot be, its worth, its value cannot be judged empirically, rationally by applying scientific logic or analysis. So its value can only be judged, its value can only be perceived by imagination because it represents the world of the ideal. So this is the very uh, the conflict that is very much present in this poem. So this is the conflict, or this is the paradox that underlies the poem. That is the world of idealism, which is set against the world of reality. So, world of idealism and world of reality. So, these two things are juxtaposed in this poem. And the poet tries to capture the world of idealism through uh, through language. That is a concrete thing. So that is the paradox of this poem, that we are trying to capture something which is uncapturable, uh, which is completely abstract. So this is the paradox of this poem. So the poet who is uncompromisingly idealistic, who always lives in the world of idealism, is trying to capture that very essence of the world of idealism through language, through images, through metaphors. So all these tools that the poet are using are concrete things. These are all concrete things, and he's trying to capture the essence of the world of idealism through these devices that he is using in poetry. Okay, and that is why we will see that there are various a number of metaphors and images that the poet uses in this poem just to capture the very essence of the world of the ideal. Anyway, now we should start reading the poem. So, how does the poem begin? Hail to the blithe spirit. Blithe, B-L-I-T-H-E, blithe. It is pronounced blithe, not bleed. Blithe. So, blithe means joyous. So here, the bird is referred to as something joyous, and it is spirit. Why does the poet uh, consider is as a spirit? Because the poet completely rejects the uh, material quality of the bird. So the poet considers the bird as something uh, which is bodiless. Okay, so body that is conceived as something material, and spirit is something which is conceived as the ideal. So this is the conflict between the uh, ideal and the real, because real is always considered as something which is material, which is mundane, and it is always looked upon as something inferior. And the soul, the spirit, is always conceived as something which is beyond our material existence with material experience, and it is always conceived as something superior than the real, the world of ideal, that is superior than the world of real. So this is the conventional way of differentiating the world of idealism and the world of materialism. So this is the uh, age-old conflict that is also represented in this poem. And here, uh, very conventionally, that the world of idealism is conceived as something superior, and that the poet, he wishes or aspires to that world of idealism. Anyway, hail to the blithe spirit. So that is why the bird is here regarded as something that belongs to the world of uh, idealism, and that is why uh, it is called spirit, not a bird. So the poet completely cancels, rejects its material existence. But we know that uh, the bird is very much material. But the poet here completely rejects its material existence and projects it as something completely ideal, bodiless. Hail to the blithe spirit. So the poet hails it, welcomes it, or greets it, because it is something that represents the world of idealism. But thou never were. So again, in the second line, the poet uh, uh, emphasizes the same thing, that it is not a bird, because if we call it a bird, then it will become a material thing, or that there could be a connection with the world of materiality. So he completely rejects that kind of uh, uh, existence of that bird. Bird thou never were, that from heaven on near it pourest thy full heart. So the bird seems to um, pour its emotion, pour its uh, passion through its singing, through its music. So there is a kind of a spontaneous uh, act on the part of the bird. So this spontaneity is something that is emphasized in this poem, because it is completely free from the world of materialism, and that is why it is so spontaneous. So why does the poet think that anything that belongs to the world of ideas, world of the ideal, are spontaneous, are joyous, uh, mm, free from any uh, touch of pain, because it is a conventional way of thinking that the world of idealism is better than the world of materialism. So pourest thy full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art. So the song of the bird is conceived as a kind of art which is much higher than the art which is practiced by the mundane poets or other creative people. So the art that is represented by the bird is unpremeditated, that is, it is spontaneous, it doesn't require any kind of effort. So it is completely effortless. So the word of idealism is joyous, it is spontaneous, and at the same time it is effortless. And that is why it can sing so spontaneously, it can completely uh, pour out its heart. Higher and higher, higher still and higher, from the earth thou springest. So the poet says that the bird has sprung from the earth, but though it has uh, sprung from the earth, but its worldly existence is it doesn't matter anymore, because now it is so removed from the world of existence. So how can a man or a thing or a bird can be completely free from its mundane existence? Because we know that it it originates from the world of materiality. So how can it be? Uh, so so here the poet actually tries to mean that by the power of imagination, one can be transported to the world of idealism. So the power of imagination, uh, or if one gets that kind of inspiration, by the virtue of which one can completely uh, remove himself from the mundane existence. So this is the power of imagination, which is always emphasized by the Romantic poets from Wordsworth to Shelley. So Shelley also conceives imagination as something as powerful that can help someone to transcend this mundane experience. So here, this bird, it represents the world of idealism, and in another aspect, it also represents the very self of the poet. So the bird is here is also the poetic self. So it represents how a poet can uh, transport himself to the world of idealism uh, by means of his poetic imagination. So, though a poet belongs to the world of reality, but by the virtue of his poetic imagination, he or she can transport themselves from the world of reality, lift themselves from the world of reality, and can reach to that world of idealism, just like this bird. So here, the representation of the bird is actually the representation of a very act of a romantic poet. So from the earth thou springest like a cloud of fire, the blue deep thou wingest. So it flies to the blue deep, that is the sky, like a cloud of fire, just like a flame of fire that also flies to or mixes with the sky. In the same way, it gets vanished in the sky. And singing still does soar, and soaring ever singest. So this is the very nature of the bird, the most uh, dominant feature of the bird. Uh, that is, it sings while it flies. So it never sings while it uh, stays in its world of in the material world. So it only sings when it flies to the sky, that is, it gets removed from the world of materiality. So when it gets completely detached from its mundane existence, it starts singing. So maybe the poet here wants to emphasize the fact that one cannot create something valuable or a high art uh, that is represented by the bird if they cannot completely remove themselves from their mundane existence. In the golden lightning of the sunken sun, now the poet will, in every stanza, he will build an image, and by that image, he will try to make us understand the very difference uh, between the world of world of idealism and the world of reality. So, in each stanza, there is one particular image that represents that very central idea. In the golden lightning of the sunken sun, over which clouds are brightening, thou dost float and run like an unbodied joy whose race is just begun. So, what does the poet say? In the golden lightning of the sunken sun, over which clouds are brightening. So, sunken sun, golden lightning. Uh, what time of the day is indicated here? Thou dost float and run like an unbodied joy whose race is just begun. As we know that this, yes, as we know that this poem was actually inspired by the poet's evening walk. So this stanza actually means the evening time, because we know that the Skylark that starts its flight in the evening. Okay, so here it actually represents the evening. Okay, not morning, not the sunrise. It actually represents the setting of the sun. So when the sun sets, the sky is full of golden lights, golden rays of the sun, over which clouds are brightening. So the clouds get brightened, get tinged with the colors of the setting sun, and we know that though the sun is sunken, but the sun is still there because its presence can be felt by the rays which are reflected in the golden clouds. So here again we see that the poet represents a kind of an image in which something is invisible, but at the same time its presence can be felt. So the bird is also the same because we cannot see it, but its presence can be felt. And this very nature can also be compared with the poetic self, because we cannot see the poet, though his poetry or his ideas influence the people of the world. So, like an unbodied joy, again, it is called unbodied joy. That is the blind spirit. That was in the first line. So that same thing is repeated. Same idea is repeated. Unbodied joy, whose race is just begun. Whose race here, race means journey. So the journey of the bird has just begun. The pale purple even means evening, mails around thy flight. Uh, so pale purple evening mails around thy flight like a star of heaven in the broad daylight. Thou art unseen, but yet I hear thy shrill delight. So like a star of heaven in the broad daylight. So what does the poet say here? The pale purple evening, that is pale purple light of the evening that melt around thy flight. So the bird gets melted with melted in the rays of the purple evening. Okay, and that is why it cannot be seen. It gets It becomes invisible. The pale purple evening melts around thy flight like a star of heaven. In the broad daylight, thou art unseen. So, star of heaven. So, the stars in the sky, though they are visible at night, but during the day, they are unseen because they are overshone by the rays of the sun, because the rays of the sun is so bright that the stars get uh, overshadowed by the blaze of the sun, so they cannot be seen. So in the same way, the bird becomes invisible. Thou art unseen, but yet I hear thy shrill delight. So delight means here song. Keen as the arrows of that silver spear, whose intense lamp narrows in the white dawn clear. Until we hardly see, we feel that it is there. So what does the poet? What is the image here? Keen as the arrows of that silver spear. So silver spear here actually means the moon, whose intense lamp narrows in the white dawn clear. So when the day breaks, the moon gets pale or gets dimmed, because with the rays of the sun, it gets faded, its rays get faded. So until we hardly see, we feel that it is there. So we know that it is still there, but it is overshadowed by the rays of the sun. All the earth and air with thy voice is loud, that is filled with thy voice, as when night is bare, from one lonely cloud the moon rains out her beams. So, just like the moon, which cannot be seen because it is covered by a single speck of cloud, but its rays uh, uh, completely fills the air, or it brightens the world. So, by that we can know that the moon is there, though we cannot see it. We feel that it is there. So, same kind of ideas are repeated through different images. All the art louder with the voice. Okay. What art thou? We know not. What is most like thee? So, by using different images, the poet feels that even after using different images, the poet thinks that he's still not able to capture the essence of the bird, and that is why he is still searching uh, more suitable images or metaphors to represent the very idea. So, what is most like thee? So, this means that the poet will continue uh, his attempt of representing the bird by finding more uh, suitable images. From rainbow clouds, their flow drops so bright to see, as from thy presence showers a rain of melody. So the rain of melody. So the bird's music is here compared with the shower. So from rainbow clouds, there flow not drops so bright to see. So the brightness of the rainbow clouds here compared with the uh, melody of the bird, but at the same time, the poet says that it is more attractive than the rainbow clouds. Like a poet hidden. So here, the comparison with a poet, uh, and this is the very uh, central idea of the poem, that here the bird is actually uh, seen or conceived as a poet hidden, like a poet hidden. So poet hidden. So that means poets are always invisible. Uh, we cannot see them, and it doesn't matter how does they look or what could be their appearances. So generally, we worship the image of the poets than their ideas. Anyway, but what does the poet actually mean here is that the poet's appearances, their physical appearances, are are nothing to the readers, because what is most important to them is the idea that the poets represent. So that is why the poets are invisible to us. So as we all love poetry, we read poetry, we know that none of the poets we have ever seen physically, but that doesn't matter to us, because we are actually uh, interested in the ideas or the concepts or the very philosophy which are represented through those poems. So, like a poet hidden in the light of thought, singing hymns unbidden. So, again, another word almost synonymous, unbidden. Uh, Another word was used, unpremeditated. So, all these represent the effortlessness of mm, uh, the creation of art. So, singing hymns unbidden, till the world is wrought to sympathy with hopes and fears it heeded not. So, hopes and fears. Uh, so, what does it actually represent? We know that Shelley, he considers the poet as a very important figure, because they are, as he declared, that they in defense of poetry, that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. So the poet, they have the power by their poetic ideas. They can bring changes to the world. They can transform or reform, sorry, reform the society. Uh, so by the creation of a truthful art, one can uh, mm, one can change the world, or one can make people to uh, take things, or make people more sympathetic, or one can provide them hope and fears. Fear, why fears? Here, fears means the poet has some visionary ideas about the future, so they can warn them, and at the same time, they can also provide hopeful ideas, and they can transform them into more sympathetic people. So, this is the very quality of a great art, which is represented by the bird. Like a high-born maiden in a palace tower, soothing her love-laden soul in secret hour. So here, an image of a uh, love-lorn maiden, so a woman who is very much sad, who is languishing with the emotions of love. So, and that lady gets uh, joy, gets or delighted by the singing of a bird. So, like a high-born maiden in a palace tower, soothing her love-laden soul in secret hour with music sweet as love, which overflows her power. So here, the girl whose heart is heavy with sorrow, because she is languishing in love, and finally she gets delighted, her heart gets delighted with the music of the bird that is singing from the bower, and that is why it is not seen, she cannot see it, but still its music delights her soul. So here again, same image is represented, something that is not cannot be seen, but it still can give us, offers us, it can offer us joy. Okay, so a maiden who is languishing love. Like a glow warm golden in a dell of dew. So here the image of a valley uh, and a glowworm which flies on the valley. So like a glowworm golden in the dell of dew. So dell here means valley, scattering unbeholden its aerial hue. Aerial, aerial is the adjective form of air. So aerial hue, hue means color. So airy color means it is transparent. That means colorless. So scattering unbeholden its aerial hue. So the glowworm that is the firefly that is showering its light, uh, which is a transparent light among the flowers and grass which screen it from the view. So the fireflies are invisible because they are screened by the grasses or the leaves of the valley, but at the same time the light that is reflecting from their body is enlightening the whole valley. So the whole valley is filled with the light of the glowworm, but the glowworms cannot be seen. So again, that same kind of idea is represented. Uh, like a rose embowered in its own green leaves. So we know that rose gets embowered, that is, gets covered in its own green leaves. So this is the very feature of the rose bird, rose flower, sorry, rose flower, because this is a very feature of the rose flower that it gets covered or screened by the green leaves. And and that is why it is generally conceived that this is the secret of the attraction of rose, because it is not fully bloomed. So it is that is why it is different from other flowers, because we generally buys roses which are not fully bloomed, which are half covered by leaves. So that is the very feature of rose buds or rose flowers, which attracts our attention. So like a rose embowered in its own green leaves by warm winds deflowered. So that rose gets bloomed or deflowered by the warm winds till the scent it gives makes faint with too much sweet those heavy winged thieves. So here is an image which is very difficult to uh, conceive, because it is very far-fetched anyway. But still, we'll try to understand what does the poet actually mean. Till the scent it gives. So the bird, sorry, the flower which is not still deflowered, that means which is not still fully bloomed. So that flower which cannot be seen because it is not bloomed, because it is screened by its own leaves. So we cannot see it, but at the same time we can enjoy its smell or the fragrance. So it still spreads the smell, though we cannot see it. So by the very smell or fragrance of the bird, we can, sorry, of the flower, we can understand its or realize its existence. Okay, just like in Ode to a Nightingale, where kids could realize or realize every flower, though they were completely in the dark. So he could identify every flower by their fragrance. So here, the same idea is represented, that we can know that identify the flower identify the rose, though we cannot see it. So till the scent it gives make faint with too much sweet. So uh, the the person who gets the scent of that flower uh, gets he may get fainted because it is so much sweet. With too much sweet, here sweet, this adjective word is uh, represented here as a noun. So here sweet means sweet smell. So too much sweet smell. Okay, so its smell is so sweet that one gets fainted. So makes faint with too much sweet those heavy winged thieves. Heavy winged thieves. So who are heavy winged thieves? Here actually it means the air or the warm winds. So why are they called thieves? Because they steal the smell of the flower. Okay, the flower which gets screened in its own leaves because it loves a kind of secrecy or privacy. So anything that remains in secrecy or privacy attracts our attention more than any other thing. So that could be a different question. Why is it so? Why it actually? What is the actual reason behind that? So that is a different area. Anyway, but here what does the poet wants to mean is that the flower that gets screened by its own leaves, that is, it remains in secrecy, a kind of a privacy that this particular flower maintains, but still its privacy or its secrecy is exposed by the wind, by the warm wind. So that is why here the wind is called thieves. They are called thieves because they steal the scent of the flower. They steal the scent of the flower, and the smell of the flower is so sweet that the air becomes heavy with the scent of the flower, and that is why they are called heavy winged. So their wings get heavy with the sweet smell of the flower. Okay, carries also a kind of a sexual imagery because the description is here as that the flower here is represented as a woman. Okay, and the wind is a kind of male person, and maybe there is a kind of a uh, sexual intercourse. So that image is also here uh, underlies. Okay, so that particular word, the flowers, indicates that idea. Sound of vernal showers on the twinkling grass. So sound of vernal showers, that is springtime showers on the twinkling grass, rain awakened flowers. So now the poet is uh, uh, combining uh, several images in a particular stanza. So we have seen that in every stanza the poet has been building up a particular image. But now in this stanza, the poet in every line the poet uses different images. So that means the poet is now is uh, uh, trying to end his poem. He is concluding, and that is why he is in a single stanza. He has mentioned different kind of metaphors. Sound of vernal showers or the twinkling glass, rain awakened flowers, all that ever was joyous and clear and fresh. So all the things that are clear, which are fresh, which are beautiful. Uh, so now he includes all things because uh, one cannot uh, write about all the beautiful things of the earth using a single stanza, so that would take a kind of epical size. So that is why the poet says that anything. So now he takes all the beautiful things um, as a common concept. So joyous and clear and fresh. So all these clear, beautiful things which are there on earth are all surpassed by the melodious song of the bird. Thy music doth surpass. So the music of the bird surpasses all these beautiful things. So here the images end. The poet has used different kind of images and metaphors to represent the idea of the bird. Now the poet thinks that he has effectively represented that idea, and now the poet from this uh, from the following stanza, the poet will uh, present a different wish. What is that wish? The poet will now seek the inspiration from that bird, just like the poem Ode to the West Wind. Teach us sprite or bird. Sprite means here spirit, sprite or bird. What sweet thoughts are thine? I have never heard praise of love or wine that panted forth a flood of rapture so divine. So the poet feels that he has never heard such a kind of spontaneous uh, song from anyone. So this is the most this is a special experience on the part of the poet, a kind of unprecedented thing. So that is why the poet wants to know the secret of the creation of such a kind of high art. So the poet seeks uh, that kind of inspiration from the bird. Teach us, sprite or bird, what sweet thoughts are thine. I have never heard praise of love or wine. So praise of love or wine, these are all considered to be uh, most attractive or most delightful, because generally we compose beautiful rhymes or poetry centering the ideas of love or wine that panted forth a flood of rapture so divine. Choral hymeneal or triumphal chant. So hymeneal, that is a song of marriage, that is bridal song. So that is also considered to be very melodious. And the triumphal chant, that is the song of victory, matched with thine would be all but an empty horn. So they cannot be compared with the beautiful art of the bird because it is so superior. Uh, a theme wherein we feel there is some hidden want, a thing wherein we feel there is some hidden want. So all the beautiful art, uh, uh, mundane art, in all the beautiful mundane art, there is still, however joyous mood they may contain, there is still a sense of sorrow, still a sense of sorrow, still a sense of pain. So, in mundane world, one cannot create something that could be completely, entirely joyful. So, uh, it must be, uh, uh, what should I say? It must be tainted with the uh, idea of pain. So, without the idea of pain, we cannot create anything. So this is the very nature of human life. This is the tragedy. One can say tragedy, but I personally don't think it is a tragedy because it is on. This is my personal idea that without the sense of pain, without the sense of sorrow, we cannot even create anything. So anyway, one should not take anything, any sorrowful thing as something negative. Anyway, but here the poet says that uh, this is the very nature of human life, that we cannot ever get ourselves free from the sense of pain. Okay, this is also the very idea of Keats's poetry in that poem, in that very famous ode. Uh, uh, what was the word? Ode on? Ode to, what was the ode? It's escaping from my mind. The ode in which the poet says that in the very temple of melancholy, uh,
ওট মেলানকোলি আমি সেটাই বলছি। ওট অন
yeah,
মেলানকোলি বোঝায়।
ode on melancholy, yes, ode on melancholy. So in that very poem, the poet says that in the very temple of happiness, veiled melancholy has her sovereign shrine. So, uh, so even in the very temple of happiness, I cannot remember the line exactly. Possibly there was the word happiness. In the very temple of the happiness, in the very temple of happiness. So where there is a temple in which only happiness, the goddess of happiness, the goddess of joy is worshipped. So even in that temple, there underlies a sense of pain. So without a sense of pain, actually, we cannot understand happiness. We cannot conceive happiness without the very sense of pain. So this is the very this is a fact. This is a fact, or it is very logical that how can we understand happiness without the sense of pain? So this is the very nature of human life. But the poet says that he wants to have a kind of experience in which there is no sense of pain. So this is an idealistic kind of a thought that cannot be achieved by any human effort. Anyway, uh, panted forth the flood of rapture or divine, choral hymeneal or any. Some hidden want. Okay, some hidden want. So there is a hidden want in everything. So nothing can satisfy us fully. So there is always a kind of a hidden want. But we know that without this hidden want, nothing can be, our life could not be so satisfactory. So this is the hidden want that always drives us. Anyway, what objects are the fountains of thy happy strain? What fields or waves or mountains? What shapes of sky or plain? What love of thine own kind? What ignorance of pain? So these are all rhetorical questions that the poet addresses to the bard. The poet feels that this bard is completely free from the sense of pain. It is completely ignorant about the experience of pain, and that is why it could sing such a beautiful song. Okay. So the poet thinks that the bard has no experience of pain, and that is why it could sing so joyfully. But the actual reality is that we know that most of the great artists of our world who creates most joyous things, most delightful things by their act, by their poetry, by their singing. So those artists, those creators who create something most joyful, which delights our heart once we see it, the moment we start listening to it. So those creators, those uh, artists, they actually suffer the worst pain. So, what is the poet Shelley is here actually trying to say, or uh, he considers as something as the fact? I don't think it is uh, the the right way of thinking, because we know if we read the life lives of most of the great artists, the creators. We will know that they had suffered the worst pain in their life, but still their art is completely removed from that sense of pain. A thing wherein we feel there is some hidden one. What objects are the okay? I have already read it. With thy clear keen joyance, languor cannot be. So the poet feels that there cannot be any speck of any sign of languor, any sense of labor in the joyful spirit of the bird. Shadow of annoyance never came near thee. Thou lovest, but never knew love's sad satiety. So the poet feels that the bird has never experienced love, sad satiety, uh, as we know in our mundane experience that love gives us more pain than joy. But the poet here feels that the bird has only experienced the better side of love, not the seamy side of it. Waking or asleep, thou of death must deem things more true and deep than we mortals dream. So the poet thinks that the bird may have a more profound understanding about life and death, and that is why it could make itself free from the uh, sense of pain. So it has a great heart. So it has a profound understanding of life. It has a great philosophic understanding about life, and that is why it could create such a kind of joyous art. Then we mortals dream, or how could thy notes flow in such a crystal stream? We look before and after. So this is the uh, very nature of human beings, that we look before and after and pine for what is not. Our sincerest laughter with some pain is fraught. Our sweetest songs are those. So this is the famous line. Our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. So even our most cherished music is that which uh, tells of sad things. So it's very common to lovers because they most often listen to songs which tell of sad things because they habituated to think that love is a painful experience. They're nourishing that ideas, which is called uh, 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 luxury of melancholy. Anyway, so here that same ideas are represented because we love the songs which tell of saddest thing that attracts our mind because we feel that pain is the most important thing of our life, most important thing, or something that is very real, or something that we should make people understand how much pain we feel. So this is the very nature of human being. They always try to make other people understand that they suffered more pain than others. So this is the most torturing thing that we do because we always try to make people realize that I am the person who suffered pain the worst possible way, or much worse than you. So in our projection of pain, we always try to beat others. So this is the very interesting feature of human being, and that is why we love uh, sad music, because that also gives us that chance to make us feel or to project ourselves someone who is so uh, who is so mistreated by the world. So this is the nature of human being, or something that is mostly nurtured in literature, poetry, particularly love poetry. Anyway, our sweetest songs are those that tale of saddest thought. Yet, if we could scorn hate and pride and fear, if we were things born, not to shed a tear. I know not, I know not how thy joy we ever should come near. So the poet feels that it is impossible for him or anyone to reach that world of idealism where the bird belongs to, because human beings are not endowed with those blessings. Better than all measures of delightful sound, better than all treasures that in books are found, thy skill to poet were thou scorner of the ground. So the skill that bird the bird possesses is something that is wished by the poet too. Thy skill to poet were thou scorner of the ground. This is the very nature of the bird that scorns the ground. It hates the mundane world, and that is why it always flies higher. It hates the ground. Anyway, teach me half the gladness that thy brain must know. So the poet thinks that the poet he could be satisfied even with half of the joyous spirit after achieving the half of the joyous spirit of the bird. Teach me half the gladness that thy brain must know. Such harmonious gladness from my lip would flow. The world would listen then, and I am as I am listening now. So this is the very wish of the poet, that he wants the world to listen to his ideas. So he thinks that he has some ideas, he has some philosophy, he has some poetic thoughts that he must convey to the world of the people, and he must make them to realize the values of his art, and they can, by listening to his music, by listening to his high art, they can transform themselves. The world could be changed. So we know Shelley always lived with that kind of dream, that by his poetic ideas he could change the whole world. So this is a very revolutionary kind of thinking, or a romantic idea that a poet by his thoughts, by his poetry, will change the whole world. It is a very kind of egoistic kind of thinking, that what the poet uh, the poet's ideas, what is the poet's ideas, what are the poet's ideas, are something more superior than the people who uh, all other people. So this is a romantic kind of a thought, that all the poets think that they have some kind of ideas or thoughts that should be conveyed to the people, because the people are common people. They lack any kind of philosophic ideas about life. So one all people should listen to his song, and he tries to reach to the world of that idealism, because without that very condition, he cannot create such kind of art that can influence the world of the people, just like the song of the bird, which is invisible, but its song is so effective. Anyway, I think we should end here. Uh, and if you have any questions, so you can share. বলো, তোমাদের কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকলে আমরা সেগুলো শেয়ার করতে পারি। আহ,
হ্যালো, হ্যাঁ দাদা, আমি চন্দ্রিমা
হ্যাঁ
বলছি।
হ্যাঁ বলো।
হ্যাঁ, বলছি যে এই কবিতাটাতে যখন শুরু হচ্ছে, শুরুর দিকে তো কবি স্পিরিট বলে সম্বোধন করছে স্কাইলার্ককে।
হুম হুম হুম
আবার যখন মাঝে যেখানে বলছে যে টিচার,
হুম
স্প্রাইট অর বার্ড, তো এই
হুম
স্প্রাইট অর বার্ড, এই অর কথাটার মধ্যে
হুম
কি একটা কন্ট্রাডিক্টরি ব্যাপার চলে আসছে
হ্যাঁ
না?
হ্যাঁ
মানে
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ
এটা
হ্যাঁ,
কেন হচ্ছে? মানে উনি
এখানে
তো
একটা
প্রথমে
কন্ট্রাডিকশন
এমফ্যাটিক্যালি বলছেন
বলছেন
শুরুতে,
একদমই।
হ্যাঁ,
হুম
সেই জায়গাটা।
হুম 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 এই জায়গাটা ঠিকই বলেছো তুমি, এই জায়গাটা একটু স্ট্রাইকিং যে পোয়েট যখনই পুরোপুরি পুরোপুরিভাবে রিজেক্ট করছে তার যে মেটেরিয়াল এক্সিস্টেন্স, কিন্তু একই সঙ্গে আবার এখানে যে স্প্রাইট, মানে দ্যাট ইজ স্পিরিট অর বার্ড, এই কথাটা এখানে তিনি বলছেন। একটু এখানে লজিক্যাল ফ্যালাসি এসে যাচ্ছে। আহ, তবে আমরা এটাকে এইভাবে অ্যানালিসিস করতে পারি যে আহ, যে দিস বার্ড অ্যাকচুয়ালি স্প্রাং ফ্রম দি ওয়ার্ল্ড অফ রিয়ালিটি। So its mundane existence cannot be fully rejected. So the poet may be conscious of that very fact. So it has two kind of existence. One is its idealistic existence, and another is its mundane existence. Though its ideal existence is more preferred or glorified by the poet than its mundane existence, and the poet says that it completely hates its mundane existence. আহ, উম, এছাড়া আর কোনো লজিক এখানে আসতে পারে কি? আমার তো মনে হয় না। যে হয়তো এখানে দুটো এক্সিস্টেন্সকে তিনি বলতে চেয়েছেন, আহ, তবে হয়তো এখানে কোনো একটা লজিক্যাল ফ্যালাসি একটু থেকে যাচ্ছে। আহ, তোমাদের আর কারো কিছু এখানে কমেন্ট করে থাকলে বলতে পারো। হুম।
হ্যাঁ, দাদা আর একটা জিনিস যেটা
হ্যাঁ।
মানে পড়ার সময় মনে হচ্ছিল যে যেহেতু স্কাইলারকে উনি ভীষণ ফ্রি ফ্রম দি মান্ডেন ওয়ার্ল্ড এরকম ভাবে মানে একজন স্পিরিট হিসেবে যেভাবে দেখানো হচ্ছে স্কাইলারকে,
হ্যাঁ।
তো সেক্ষেত্রে উনি যে ইমেজগুলো ইউজ করছেন, কখনো
হুম।
গ্লো
হুম। হুম। হুম।
কখনো রোজ, এরকম
হুম।
ভাবে নানা রকম ভাবে যেভাবে কম্প্যারিজন আনছেন, তো
হ্যাঁ।
উনি কি চাইলে এই জায়গায় কোনো অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট আইডিয়া দিতে পারতেন? মানে এই যে কংক্রিট বিষয়গুলো নিয়ে উনি
হুম।
ডিল করছেন,
হুম।
গ্লো ওয়ার্ম
হুম।
আমরা
হুম।
সবাই দেখছি বুঝছি জিনিসটা কি, কনসেপ্টটা।
হুম।
তো একটা অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট জিনিস মানে যে
হুম।
যদিও স্কাইলারকে আমরা কংক্রিট হিসেবে ধরেও জিনিসটাকে অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্টই ভাবছি
হ্যাঁ। হ্যাঁ।
এই
হ্যাঁ।
কবিতার মধ্যে, তো
হুম।
সেটা কি উনি ইচ্ছা করে করেছেন যাতে রিডাররা কংক্রিট জিনিসটার সাথে অ্যাসোসিয়েট করতে পারেন বেশি,
হ্যাঁ।
সেই হিসাবে নাকি
যখন
অন্য
যখনই
কোনো?
না, ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে যে এই পোয়েটিক টেকনিকটাই হচ্ছে এরকম।
হুম
যখন কোনো অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট আইডিয়াস এর কথা বলা হয়, অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট আইডিয়াস কে তো আমরা মানে ওটাকে আমরা চট করে বুঝতে পারি না, কারণ পোয়েট যেটাকে কনসিভ করছেন সেটা আরেকজন কি করে সেটাকে কনসিভ করবেন, সেটা সম্ভব নয়। তাহলে স্বাভাবিকভাবে কি হচ্ছে যে সেই অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট আইডিয়াটাকে যখন আমরা রিপ্রেজেন্ট করার চেষ্টা করি, তখন সেটাকে কোনো একটা কংক্রিট কোনো ইমেজ বা কংক্রিট কোনো একটা কিছু দিয়ে বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করি। আমরা জেনারেল কনভারসেশনেও আমরা তাই করি, যে যখন আমরা দেখি যে আমার আইডিয়াটা কেউ বুঝতে পারছে না, তখন আমরা কি করি, কোনো কংক্রিট কিছু দিয়ে বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করি। তাই সবসময় এটা হয়, মানে অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট কোনো কিছুকে তুমি যখন রিপ্রেজেন্ট করবে, তখন তোমার একমাত্র উপায় হচ্ছে তোমাকে কোনো কংক্রিট ইমেজের মধ্যে দিয়ে সেটাকে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করতে হবে। আবার কংক্রিটকে যখন তুমি তার যে ভ্যালু সেটাকে যখন রিপ্রেজেন্ট করবে, তখন সেটা আবার অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট কোনো কিছু দিয়ে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করা হয়। মানে সবসময় উল্টোটা হয়। এছাড়া তো হয় হয় না, কারণ এই ডিভাইসটাই এটা, তুমি এছাড়া অন্য কোনো ভাবে সেটাকে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করতে পারবে না। যেমন লাভ হচ্ছে একটা অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট আইডিয়া। এবার তোমাকে যদি বলা হয় যে যে লাভ কি, তুমি এটাকে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করো, তখন রিপ্রেজেন্ট করতে গেলে তুমি স্বাভাবিকভাবে কি করবে, তুমি কিছু কংক্রিট আইডিয়াস নিয়ে আসবে, এছাড়া তুমি এটাকে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করতে পারবে না। হ্যাঁ। যখনই তুমি লাভকে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করতে গিয়ে প্রথমেই তোমাকে কি বলা হচ্ছে যে 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 হোয়াট ইজ লাভ, যখন তোমাকে এই কোয়েশ্চেনটা করা হচ্ছে, যে এই কোয়েশ্চেনটা যখনই করা হচ্ছে তখন একটা প্রবলেম হয়ে হয়ে যাচ্ছে। তার কারণ হচ্ছে কোয়েশ্চেনটাই করা যায় না। তার কারণ হচ্ছে যে হোয়াট ইজ লাভ যখন বলা হচ্ছে, যে এই যে তিনটে ওয়ার্ড হোয়াট ইজ লাভ, এই তিনটেই হচ্ছে যে কংক্রিট জিনিস। যে ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজটা তো কংক্রিট জিনিস, তাহলে কংক্রিট জিনিস দিয়ে তুমি একটা অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট জিনিসকে কি করে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করবে, সেটা হয় না। কিন্তু এটা আমাদের একটা অ্যাটেম্প্ট, একটা অ্যাটেম্প্ট যেটা আমরা করতে চাই। এবার সেই অ্যাটেম্পটে একমাত্র প্রথম আমাদের যে টুল হচ্ছে ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ। ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ছাড়া আমরা তো বলতে পারি না। যে যে কোনো আমাদের মনের মধ্যে যে ভাবনাগুলো আছে, সেই ভাবনাগুলোকে আমি কিভাবে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করব, তাহলে সেটাকে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করতে গেলে আমাকে ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজটাই বলতে হবে। তাহলে সেই ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ছাড়া আমি বলতে পারি না, কিন্তু ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজটাই হচ্ছে কংক্রিট জিনিস। তুমি যখনই কোনো একটা আইডিয়ার কথা বলো, সেটা তুমি লাভের কথাই বলো, পেইনের কথা বলো, যাই বলো না কেন, সেটাকে যখনই তুমি বলতে যাবে তোমাকে ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজের মধ্যে দিয়েই বলতে হবে। আর ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ইটসেলফ ইজ কংক্রিট, ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজটা অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট নয়। তাহলে কখনোই ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজের মধ্যে দিয়ে কোনো একটা জিনিসকে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করা যায় না, কিন্তু তোমাকে করতেই হবে। আর ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজের মধ্যে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করতে গেলে সেখানে কি হবে, যে স্বাভাবিকভাবে যে খুব ইজি কিছু টুল হচ্ছে, যেটা বোঝানোর ক্ষেত্রে সুবিধা হয়, সেটা হচ্ছে তোমার হয় সিমিলি ইউজ করা, নয় মেটাফোর, নয়তো ইমেজ ইউজ করা। কারণ ইমেজের ডেফিনেশনের মধ্যে কি হচ্ছে, অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্টকে কংক্রিট করে, তাই তো? কোনো অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট আইডিয়াকে খুব কংক্রিট ওয়েতে সে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করে, সো দ্যাট ইট বিকামস মোর ইজি ফর আস টু আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড হুম দ্য ভেরি আইডিয়া, তাই তো? সেই জন্য ইমেজ গুলোকে ইউজ করা হয়, এন্ড দ্যাট ইজ ওয়াই ইমেজ ইজ আ ভেরি
হ্যাঁ।
সিগনিফিকেন্ট যে টুল হুইচ ইজ ইউজড ইন পোয়েট্রি। ইমেজ ছাড়া কোনো পোয়েট্রি হয় না, কারণ পোয়েট্রি সবসময় একটা অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট আইডিয়ার কথা বলে, আর ওই অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট আইডিয়াকে বোঝাতে গেলে তাকে সুইটেবল ইমেজ আনতে হবে, তাছাড়া সে কিছুতেই সেটা বলতে পারবে না, তাই না? যখনই তোমাকে বলা হবে হোয়াট ইজ লাভ, তুমি বলে লাভ ইজ এ রোজ। এই যে কথাটা যখন বলছো, এই যে রোজটা নিয়ে আসলে, এটাই কি হয়ে গেল, যে একটা কংক্রিট কিছু এসে গেল, যেটাকে দিয়ে তুমি রিপ্রেজেন্ট করার চেষ্টা করছো, একটা সিম্বল হয়ে, যেটাকে আমরা বলছি সিম্বল। সিম্বল কি করে, যে সিম্বল হচ্ছে একটা কংক্রিট থিং হুইচ রিপ্রেজেন্ট সামথিং অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট, তাই তো? সিম্বলের
হুম,
ব্যাপারটাই তাই।
একদম
হ্যাঁ,
একদম।
হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ।
আর দাদা
আর
একটা লাইন
হ্যাঁ,
একটুখানি বুঝতে
হুম,
একটু
হুম,
অসুবিধা হয়েছে,
হুম।
সেটা হয়েছে যে ওই একটা লাইন আছে, টু সিম্প্যাথি উইথ হোপস অ্যান্ড ফিয়ার্স ইট হিডেড নট। এই হিডেড নট কথাটা কেন বলছে এখানে?
উইথ সিম্প্যাথি অ্যান্ড হোপ ইট,
হিডেড নট।
হ্যাঁ, 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 ওটা আমি ঠিক স্ট্যান্ডার্ডটা মনে করতে পারছি না, সম্ভবত ওটা হচ্ছে যে
ওই যে
তোমার
লাইক আ পোয়েট হিডেন, ওই যে স্ট্যান্সাটা,
তুমি একটু স্ট্যান্ডার্ডটা পড়ো।
like a poet hidden in the light of thought, singing hymns unbidden till the
হুম,
world
হুম,
is wrought, to sympathy with
হুম,
hopes
হুম,
and fears, it heeded
হ্যাঁ,
not.
হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ।
It
It
heeded not,
heeded
এই
not,
জায়গাটা
that is
বলছে।
the world has
হুম।
never heeded, the world has never heeded, that is the world has never heard such kind of music, such kind of uh, high art। সেটাই বলছি যে মানে দিস ক্রিয়েশন অফ দ্য বার্ড ইজ সো ইউনিক দ্যাট ইট হ্যাজ নেভার বিন হার্ড বাই এনি ওয়ান। হুম ইট হিডেড নট, দ্যাট ইজ ইট বলতে এখানে ওয়ার্ল্ড অর দ্য পিপল অফ দ্য ওয়ার্ল্ড, দে হ্যাভ নেভার হার্ড ইট। ঠিক আছে? আচ্ছা,
আচ্ছা।
বলো আর, আর কার কি প্রশ্ন আছে একটু বলে ফেলো। যদিও আজকে আমাদের অনেকটা সময় হয়ে গেছে, আহ, যদি আর কারো কিছু প্রশ্ন থাকে করতে পারো। আচ্ছা, মনে হচ্ছে আর কারো কিছু জিজ্ঞেস করার কিছু নেই। ওকে, তাহলে আজকে আমরা এখানেই শেষ করছি।